So the Supreme Court struck down the new eviction ban that Biden just put into place after being prodded by Cori Bush when she was protesting and sleeping on the Capitol steps. Take a look at this little news report on that.
Across the nation, the Supreme Court's ruling on the national eviction moratorium has caused confusion, questions, and real concern.
I don't want to be on the street.
Yvonne Bryant is among the estimated 21,000 people in danger of eviction in Chicago. Nationwide, 6.4 million households are behind on rent, according to a federal survey. In Nebraska, landlords already are pressing to push people out.
We had a case just this morning where yesterday at 5 o'clock, I thought the CDC eviction moratorium was going to protect them. And then come this morning, it didn't. And it's a family, there's kids.
New York's new governor calls the Supreme Court decision appalling and insensitive. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi described it as arbitrary and cruel. Both women have promised to explore legislative solutions to the problem. And the president is asking state and local leaders to block evictions.
Our objective is to keep as many people around the country in their homes as possible.
But landlords argued in court they've lost as much as $19 billion a month. That's especially tough for individual landlords who own half the rental properties across the U.S., according to industry experts.
This decision is long overdue. The real harm has been impacted upon the small landlords who had tenants who were not impacted by COVID who did not pay. Two, had tenants who have absconded and abandoned the property.
Dean Hunter tells me there will be no tsunami of evictions. He says because there are hundreds of programs and hundreds of billions of dollars available in rental assistance, though only 11% of the Treasury's rent relief funds have been paid out. And he points out eviction is a process. In New York, for instance, people who have applied for rent assistance cannot be evicted while the application is being processed. But in Nebraska, I'm told, the number of evictions tripled last year just in the week after the state's own moratorium expired. So, Shep, we'll see what happens.
Well, this is infuriating, and this is disastrous, and this is a housing crisis the likes of which maybe we've never seen ever, even during the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. By the way, the same Supreme Court that told us, if we get rid of some of the Voting Rights Act and civil rights protections, it's not like the South is going to immediately try to take away people's right to vote. Then they did strike down parts of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, and the southern states did exactly that. So their predictions are not good. Their predictions are terrible. And you have these like landlord groups who are saying, evictions aren't going to tick up if we take away the protections and the moratorium. I highly, highly doubt that. They say, well, there's state and there's local protections. Yeah, but what happens when those run out? And what about the loopholes in that system? There was already loopholes with the federal eviction moratorium. So now you're getting rid of some of the big protections at the national level. There's going to be loopholes and problems at the state and local level, and sometimes you'll just go through the process and go through the system, and they'll rule against you anyway. So millions and millions and millions of people are going to be homeless as a result of this. Now, the Supreme Court says, well, the CDC doesn't have the authority to do this. Stop and think about that. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention doesn't have the authority to prevent disease by doing an eviction moratorium. They say, well, it has to go through Congress. Okay, well, they probably don't have the votes, but they should try and see what happens. But when I look at this story, what I'm reminded of is a Supreme Court that has the potential to lose its authority. There were times in American history where the Supreme Court made decisions that were so bad that they undermined their authority. And basically, you had Marbury versus Madison, which gave the Supreme Court the ability to do judicial review. Other portions of the government were just like, yeah, now we disagree. And we're going to not listen to the court because if we did, you philosopher kings would absolutely destroy the country and drag us down a path that is more dangerous. So I honestly think we're flirting with that yet again. When you have a decision like this and you have millions and millions of people who might be kicked out of their home as a result of it. Now, this isn't to take away responsibility from Congress. They should pass an extension of the eviction moratorium. So they're just as bad. They probably have an approval rating that's 20% or less. for good reason. So the whole government is corrupt and broken, but there is something about an unelected branch of the government, the judicial branch in this case, just decreeing certain things based on their narrow, rigid interpretation of the way the law is supposed to work and destroying people's lives as a result of it. There is something about that sits extra gross, because at least there's some accountability when it comes to politicians where you can just vote them out. With the Supreme Court, there's none. They're appointed, they sit there for life, and they could just casually declare that people's lives are going to be ruined. Kicking people out of their homes in the middle of a raging pandemic, in the middle of a wave that's just as bad, if not worse, than the original winter wave with the original COVID. Now this is the Delta variant that's largely taken over. By the way, there's $47 billion that's allocated for rental assistance and relief. Only about $5 billion or $6 billion of that money has gone out the door. And we thought, hey, they were bought extra time. The federal government, state and local governments were bought extra time to get more of that rental assistance out. But turns out they didn't buy any more time, or they did buy a little bit of time, but the bureaucracy is still so messed up and so grotesque that it didn't matter, because you just had a slow trickle of stuff, of money moving along, even though obviously we should have gotten 90% of it out, 100% of it out in the time that we were waiting for the decision from the court. So this is a disaster, guys. This is a disaster. We've already seen stories. Jordan Chariton of Status Quo has done a very good job of tracking people who are still being evicted, even when we had the moratorium eviction in place, or excuse me, the eviction moratorium in place. I'm dyslexic and it just popped reared its ugly head up again. So he did a good job on that, but there's about to be a surge, a tsunami, more evictions coming. We already have a homelessness crisis in this country, and it's about to get a hell of a lot worse. So this is just another way in which every level of government has failed us, pathetically failed us. And stop and think about this. Billionaires have gotten phenomenally more wealthy during this pandemic. They've added trillions of dollars to their respective net worth during this pandemic. At the same time that's happening, we're going to see a surge of evictions and foreclosures. So we're going to see homelessness drastically increase. My prediction is over 100%. It's going to increase over 100%. So we have about 500,000 homeless people now. It's going to be at least 1 million. I mean, shit. It might be way more than that. So this extreme inequality cannot continue, because the system is undermining itself, and the foundation and the structure of the system it's built on sand, and people can only take so much before there's basically a system implosion. So buckle up, guys. As bad as it is now, it's about to get a hell of a lot worse. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.